Welcome, folks. It is Monday, which means it's time for Monday Night Nerd. Welcome, one and all, to another live episode of Monday Night Nerd. I appreciate you all spending your Monday nights with me. Tonight, we have a fun little episode. We're going to be talking about 10 of the best comic books that I think new comic book readers should read. Because in the world today, comic books are not as popular as they used to. And we have a whole generation of fans growing up as nerds and geeks like we did. And they don't really know a lot about comic books except for the Marvel and DC universe and what they can find on TV. So I'm going to go through 10 that I think people should give a little bit of a crap about. I hope you're all doing well. It has been a good week so far. We're just beginning it, but so far it's been good. We have a little bit of news to go through, and then we will jump into the main event. If you're here, I appreciate it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and all those things. If you're here on TikTok, hit that follow button, because we do this every single Monday night, except for next week. Next week, there will not be a show. I will be on vacation with my wife. We will be enjoying the nice warm sun and not be freezing our butts up here in Canada. So I will not be here Monday. We will not have a show. So I will let you guys enjoy the Monday night as you used to before I started doing the show. Let's jump into the news. We only got a little bit, but some interesting news. Over the past little while, I have kind of just been in video game mode. I stupidly decided to start playing Red Dead Redemption, which I shouldn't have done because I love that game so much, and now I'm wanting to play it all the time. Pretty Nerdy Crystal has been bugging the daylights out of me to start working on my cosplay because she knows that I really want to have Darius done for Anime North, so she has been bugging the crap out of me. I've done some work on it. I have a bunch of stuff cut out of foam and glued and ready to go. I just have to do the detail work, the pain in the ass part of putting it all together and making it fit properly and all that. But instead, I've been playing a lot of video games, and I was going to start this week, but with vacation, I don't want to get into the mood of doing stuff and then have to stop and go do nothing and relax. So I have just been doing video games, but I decided that I should do something a little different this weekend, and I watched some stuff. I had some free time because my wife was out having some fun with her friends and having a couple girls' nights out. So I decided to kick back and watch a whole season of TV. Yes, I watched an entire season of a TV show because I was excited to watch it, and I'm glad I did. But first, I watched a special. I watched the new Muppet special. I am a child of the 80s, technically, late 80s, but I am also a child of the 90s, and I grew up watching the Muppets. I love the Muppets growing up. I've always been a fan of the show. I watched the old episodes. I've watched the newer stuff. I've watched the movies. The Christmas Carol one is amazing. Muppet Treasure Island is one of my favorite movies as a kid. So I was very interested to see what their take on the new Muppet show was going to be. This one, if you don't know, is just a one-off special. They're going to see how it works, and if it works, they're going to do more. This one was led by Seth Rogen. He was sort of the celebrity figurehead behind it. However, the special guest of the episode was Sabrina Carpenter, which was a very interesting choice, and I know a lot of people have had, well, I will say a vocal minority online has had a problem with Sabrina Carpenter being a celebrity on The Muppet Show because of her sexuality. And there was even a joke where Kermit says something to the extent of, we're trying to work the kinks out of this. And Sabrina says, I don't mind a kink. And he kind of gives her a look. And it just, for most kids, I can tell you, it probably went over their heads. They probably didn't even notice it. And I bet you not a lot of kids watched the Muppet Show special. It was probably more adults who grew up with the Muppets. But there was a vocal minority online saying that they shouldn't have put Sabrina Carpenter in there and they should not have used that joke. I think it's so little of an impact on kids. I mean, I remember watching The Muppet Show growing up and seeing Alice Cooper on there, seeing Vincent Price, and these are two horror icons, one music, one movie, but horror icons that if you dove deeper into their repertoire when you were a kid, you would find some things that may disturb you, but I don't think that's really happening nowadays, and if they do, you can find a lot worse things online than what Sabrina Carpenter is singing about. But was it a good episode? It was. It was about a half hour long. It was the traditional Muppet Show variety. They had some singing. They had Sabrina Carpenter and Kermit do a song together. The overarching plot was who was going to finish the show, because Kermit just could not decide who the final act was going to be of this new special. And it was a good show. It was a good ending. I was happy with, it wasn't, break your stomach and your ribs laughing drop down hilarious, but it was fun. It was a fun little show. It was worth the half hour. Seth Rogen had a couple little moments in there, but overall, all the Muppets you love are there. They're all having fun, and I hope they do more of these. I think if they try and do, like they've tried to do weekly stuff in the past, and they've done different versions of the Muppet Show where they've shown like behind the scenes and more of an adult show and stuff like that, I don't think that's the way they should do it anymore. I think that's asking a lot of the Muppet Show. I think nowadays, just doing these one-off specials every time they get some good ideas together, I think it's a great idea. It's a property that's always going to work, but I do think in today's world where the attention is so divided across tons of thousands of platforms and tens of thousands of shows, movies, video games, etc., it's kind of hard to get that audience on the Muppet Show every single week unless they got a really good guest. So I think it was good. I was happy to watch, and I think if you're a Muppet fan, you will enjoy the special. Now, let's talk about me watching an entire season. I binged a TV show. If you don't know, I'm not a TV guy. I do not watch TV that often. I've watched, if you name me a very popular show, I have probably seen an episode or two or none. I rarely watch TV. I barely watch Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, all those things, never seen them. However, I am, as we know tonight because of the show, I am a comic fan, and I had heard great things about Wonder Man. And I was a little apprehensive about Wonder Man because this is a Marvel property, and Marvel has not had a great track record recently with shows. Some have done well, but a lot of them have kind of outlived their welcome. They've been way longer than they needed to be. But when I found out that Wonder Man was 8 episodes and only a half an hour each, and this is what is called a Marvel Spotlight, as they call it, they tried something different, and it was only 8 episodes and half hour, which was good because it kind of just felt like an extended movie. So, what did I think of Wonder Man? Honestly, a lot of people are sleeping on this show, and they shouldn't be. This was a lot of fun. It was such a breath of fresh air for the Marvel Universe. It is not a Marvel show in the fact of there is not a whole bunch of superhero punchy. It is such a character-driven show that every person who's complained about the MCU over the past decade has been complaining about how it's just too, big portals in the sky and all these aliens and stuff. Wonder Man brings the character-driven story that you guys have wanted. Do not sleep on Wonder Man. It is such a good show. If you've ever done acting or you've ever done performance of any kind, whether it's as a cosplayer on stage or if you've actually done acting in some way, watch this show. You will relate to it so much. And as someone who knows actors and has done a brief bit of acting here and there when I was younger, I was really able to see the amazing commitment of Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who was Wonder Man. And he is very good in the role because he kind of has to play different versions of himself. So if you don't know who Wonder Man is a character who is an actor who wants to be a superhero. He has powers, but he kind of keeps them to himself. In this show, this version of him, he is an actor who has powers, who has to hide them. Something happened, and it is revealed and shown in one of the episodes that movie studios and television studios do not want to employ superheroes because the insurance premiums are so high. Because if something goes wrong, it is catastrophic. It is an interesting way to bring conflict into the world of Wonder Man, who could just be a superhero actor. And the way Abdul-Mateen does it is such an interesting way because he is such a great actor and he has to play a great actor, but there are also points where he shows him auditioning, and it is him trying to be a bad actor. And I know for a lot of people that's real, it's not easy to understand. Think of it this way. Think of something you're very good at. I play the drums. We can walk and chew gum. Walk and chew gum or play the drums or whatever you're good at badly. It's real hard to do something you know how to do badly. And he does such a good job. He plays a bad actor at points so well. It was such a great performance. Ben Kingsley is in it as the once was Mandarin, as an acting coach, sort of mentor to Wonder Man. It is such a good show. Again, it's only 4 hours. Give it time. Give it a shot if you're not an MCU fan anymore. It is not. There was one fight scene in the entire show. In 4 hours, there was one fight, and it was not like big superhero versus supervillain fight. It was a back alley fight, and that's it. It is such a character story. It is such a great, gripping feeling. The ending, I kind of saw the ending coming, but I still enjoyed it as much as I did. So give it a shot. I think everybody's sleeping on it because we're kind of in that MCU, we're kind of getting tired of it. This is something different. Give it a shot. Enjoy Wonder Man. The only other thing I was going to talk about today, and I planned on it, but there wasn't really a lot to talk about, and that is the trailers from yesterday. There was a bunch of Super Bowl commercials that I don't really care. Like, I watched a few of them, and I'm like, kind of funny. I watched the Dunkin' Donuts one, kind of funny. But the Supergirl trailer came out, and it was a Supergirl trailer. We saw Baby Crypto, which was cool, but all of the shots in it were pretty much a little bit extended from the original trailer. Not a whole lot of new footage. I remember Marvel was saying they weren't going to do a Doomsday trailer or anything like that, so I wasn't expecting that. The only other one that stood out was Super Mario Galaxy trailer. That had a little bit of new footage and a little bit of things pushed in because of the Olympics. Nothing really stood out to me. Again, Rosalina had a fight scene with the big mech guy from Galaxy. Princess Peach had a little bit of stuff. We finally got our close-ups of Baby Mario and Baby Luigi, but they were in the original trailer. No one just really focused on them. Overall, I'm excited for that movie. I'm excited for the Supergirl movie, but I just feel like those trailers were kind of a waste because they really didn't do a lot of extra that we didn't already have. But overall, good Super Bowl. Go Seahawks. I didn't watch it. I'm not really an NFL fan. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm not really an NFL fan. But yeah, overall, it was okay. That's kind of it for the news. I have to take 1 second because my wife is away right now. She is just texting me something. 1 second, talks amongst yourselves. Boom. All right. That is it. All right. Let's jump into the sponsor, and then we'll jump into the main event. Folks, we know who the sponsor is. It's who I just messaged. My loving, amazing, incredible wife is always a sponsor here on the show. I would not be the person I am without her, and I say it every single week, but it is the truth. I get to go spend a week away with her being just relaxing, enjoying the warmth, and not be freezing my ass off anymore in Canada. We're going to have a great time, and I would not be doing this stuff if it wasn't for her because I never thought I'd travel, and I get to do that because of my wife. So, hun, I love you. You will always be my sponsor. And if you're still here, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and all those things. We do this every single week, except for next week because I'm going to be on vacation. I won't be here. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Okay, let's talk about the main event, folks. Let's jump into comic book news. Or comic book thoughts. So why are we doing this? Most of the people here are probably comic book fans. And I love you. I love you for it. I'm a giant comic book fan. That's why I have a giant Ghost Rider cosplay and a giant Gambit cosplay that I walk around in. But I think we can all agree that the comic book world is not what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. When I started cosplaying, the MCU and the DCEU were going gangbusters. And now we can all admit that anime and that world has kind of taken over, and the comic book world is not as big as it used to be. And that happens. I remember talking to some people back in the day, and I say back in the day, like a year or two ago, where I had brought up that, anime is kind of the king right now with a lot of nerds and geeks. And they said, well, we think comic books should be, they should still be riding high as the main thing. And I said, well, it ebbs and flows. Like there's many different properties and many different things that will rise and they'll fall, and they'll rise and they'll fall. Like the 90s had an amazing comic book run, and then the 2000s kind of dropped, and then the MCU came out, and now it's kind of dropped. It happens. It never stays as 100% everyone's fandom, because we all get kind of tired of it after a while. It becomes very derivative and repetitive. So we are going to talk about some comic books, because there's probably a lot of nerds and a lot of geeks out there that are either new to comic books or have not really seen many comic books besides what they can consume on TV and movies. So the MCU, and then for TV, we've got a whole bunch of different things. So I'm going to talk about 10 series, books, whatever you want to call them, and I'm going to tell you why I think you should give them a read. And there's probably people in here who haven't read these books, and I'm just a big fan of these. Now, one thing I would want to mention at the beginning is these are going to be mostly Marvel and DC. There's a couple other ones in here. Now, you're probably saying, well, what about Watchmen, Walking Dead, Scott Pilgrim, Sandman, all those things? I love all those books. However, you can get those books pretty much as they were written, except little tweaks, in different forms. You have a Watchmen movie that is pretty much cover to cover the book. You have a Watchmen TV show if you want something a little different. Walking Dead is pretty much the entire book series with little tweaks. Sandman, same thing. Scott Pilgrim, there's a movie and a TV show. Invincible, same thing. So these are all books and movies that either established a character in the way that we all love, or reinterpreted the character in ways that we all love, or are just good stories that people may know the character but not really know a lot about them because they've just seen them in the MCU. So I'm going to shut up for talking about that, and we're going to talk about the individual books. So we're going to start off one that I think might be a little bit of a controversial pick. Maybe, maybe not, because I think a lot of people think of this person and they think of one book by this person. But I'm actually not a fan of that book. I'm actually not a fan of that movie either. And you know what that one is when I say that. We're going to start things off with Frank Miller's Batman Year One. Now, you're probably saying, it's Frank Miller. Why isn't Dark Knight on there? There's one reason. I like Frank Miller's writing. I hate Frank Miller's art. I'm sorry. I've never liked his artwork. I know he has a giant fandom and people think he is the king. I've never liked it. I'm sorry. And I know that because I hate the movie, I must hate the book. It has nothing to do with the similarities. It's just, I didn't like the movie and I just don't like the artwork. And as an artist, as someone who drew all the time when he was a kid, the art made a big difference in if I liked the book. So why Year One Batman? We all know who Batman is. Why this one? Well, because it kind of is the blueprint for why we like Batman now. This was a very grounded, realistic take on Batman that I think a lot of people back in the day were used to, the TV show Batman and the goofiness of Batman. The comics back in the day were not the gritty Batman we have now. I think if you went back to that way, and we kind of have with Batman Brave and the Bold, but it because of this book, you really got a grounded, gritty version of Batman that I think really brought people into the fandom. This, again, brought many people into the fandom because of this is the modern origin of Batman. So it redefined Bruce's early days. Batman now, there's so many pieces and artwork from this book, and I would love to show all of it on here, but we don't have enough time. But there are key images in this book that you have seen in movies, recreated in different versions. There are panels that are almost taken right off the page and put into movies. The bat breaking through the window, stuff like that, is brought right from this book. This is a starting point for this character, and also brought in other characters that really didn't have as much focus on Batman as they used to be. Commissioner Gordon was not really a key character in the Batman story until year one. This really showed Commissioner Gordon as an ally of Batman and bringing his focus of beating the corruption in the JCPD and wanting to take down the criminals internally, while Batman was sort of the eyes and ears of Gordon on the streets, taking out the major criminals. And again, this was bringing Batman into a very real world, showing that he is a human being. He can get hurt. He is still figuring it out. This is, as the title says, the first year of Batman. So he is making mistakes. He is getting injured. He is showing that this is not as easy as some past comics have shown, where Batman just somehow survives by running down the dock with a giant bomb like the Adam West show. This was showing the world what Batman can truly be, and we would not have the world of Batman now if it was not for this book. So we're kicking things off with a big one. We're kicking things off with Frank Miller. We're going to jump across the street, folks. We went from DC. Now we're going to jump into the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a universe that hasn't been in the cinematic universe of Marvel, but will be very, very soon. And I got a feeling if they're going to bring these group into the Marvel Cinematic Universe completely, they're going to be stealing a lot from the Jim Lee X-Men line, because the X-Men are now going to be in the MCU officially, thanks to a million different reports. We do know that some of them will be coming back for Doomsday, but I think this is the time where we are going to get the full mutant X-Men, Xavier, Wolverine, Cyclops, and all that. And most of the reason we know this group as well as we do is because of Jim Lee and Chris Claremont's run on X-Men in the 90s. This is again taking a group that people knew about but didn't really have the connection to that they do now, and just brought them into the world of the modern teen, modern kid reading comics, and just blowing this franchise out of the water. This was one of, if not the best-selling comic books for a very, very long time, and deservingly so. It's pretty hard to not think of an X-Men character or run or idea that was not taken some little bit of it from this Jim Lee, Chris Claremont. You've got characters like Cyclops. You've got characters like Wolverine. You've got characters like Psylocke that grew into the major characters that everyone loves. We would not have characters like Psylocke in Marvel Rivals if it wasn't for how well she was done and written, and complete character arcs with the Chris Claremont run. And this was a very good run because this showed a lot of long-term storytelling with Jim Lee and Chris. So this was blending a lot of, almost a soap opera feeling to it. There was a lot of the romance between Scott and Jean, and Wolverine kind of feeling those feelings for Jean was brought because of this series. So this is definitely a series that if you are into X-Men, if you know who the X-Men are and love these characters but have never really read anything X-Men, or you're a new reader who wants to get into the groundwork before these guys hit the movie screens and are in the MCU completely, you want to go into this series. Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, X-Men run from the 90s. I couldn't promote this more. I've probably read this more than anything else on this list because they do such a good job. And also, it birthed an amazing animated TV show because of this. So we've gone from a really old comic book, and I say that not really, really old, but compared to today, kind of old. We've gone to the 90s. Now we're going to go a little further forward, and this is a reimagining of a character that I think needed it, but I think they could have done a different version of this character, but the way that they did it so well, I would have been wrong in my assumption. And that is Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel. Now, this is a book that I slept on. Totally admit it. And a lot of people slept on the TV show because this isn't this isn't my Marvel. And I use that word because this isn't a book that I would sit there and go, oh, it's Miss Marvel. Like that's the girl book, or this is a good book. And if you can look at the inner turmoil and the inner things that Kamala Khan goes through in this book, you will appreciate it a little more. So for you, this is a modern take on a coming of age story, basically. And if you've watched the if you haven't watched the TV show does a very good rendition of what this book is. And that is, Kamala Khan is a Marvel fan. She is a fan of Miss Marvel, the old character Miss Marvel. And she is endowed with the powers of Miss Marvel, and she becomes the new Miss Marvel. However, it is a very different book than what the original Miss Marvel is, and that's because you can tell by her skin tone, she is not just, the Caucasian Supergirl or Miss Marvel. She is of a different ethnicity, and that brings in a whole bunch of new readers, and I think that's good. I've had this argument with so many people who slept on this show and didn't just say, like I do, that these things are just not built for me, but they're just like, these shouldn't have happened. And I said, yeah, you might think that, but there's probably a bunch of girls who love Miss Marvel and are now comic book readers because of that. And maybe those readers become writers or artists, and then maybe they go on to create the comic book that you fall in love with later on, or someone else falls in love with. Again, this isn't the book that I would have jumped on and been like, oh, Miss Marvel, I love this. But seeing this person who is a Marvel fangirl and has a different ethnicity that some people do not get along with, and seeing her try to traverse not only the new powers she has, but getting the spotlight and as still being a child, basically, it is a lot that this girl has to deal with. And I think they wrote it so well. G. Willow Wilson does a great job writing this. She is an incredible writer. She's also written something else that I cannot think of. I should have wrote it down on my notes. But the art style is really cute. It's a really fun book. There's a lot of humor in it, but there's also a lot of understanding that this girl's going through a hell of a lot trying to be the new Miss Marvel, and thankfully she succeeds. And I'm glad this book did as well as it did, and this character is still doing well, to the point that we all didn't like the Marvel game, but her being the focus of that Marvel game and her getting her own series is well deserved after so many years of doing such a good book. So we've gone from Batman, we've gone to X-Men, we've gone to Miss Marvel. Let's jump back into the DC world. And this DC world, we're going to go into an alternate universe. And there are tons of alternate universes out there. There is worlds that the multiverse thing has just become so overkilled at this point. But there is one that stands out more than any of them, and that is the Superman Red Sun series. And again, this is another one that I slept on because I went, a Russian Superman? I don't know. Not really something that I wanted. It is actually a very good book, and it is written... it's written in a way that you really don't need a lot of Superman knowledge. I feel like that is something that a lot of these multiverse books and movies and TV shows have a problem of doing, is they tweak something, but they don't tweak it enough that it's almost rewritten the character. It's tweaked enough that you still need to know who that character was back before to understand how this is an alternate universe. This book, you can go completely cold, never read a Superman book, and still enjoy this book. It is an interesting what if understanding of Superman, and that is, as you can probably guess what it is. It's not that hard to understand. Superman crashes into the Soviet Union and instead of Kansas, and it just completely flips his values. And it's an interesting take on it because this is supposed to be the man who is, not Mr. USA, but, freedom and good for the world. But he's now in a world that is very not that. And you're full of communism. And what does that bring to the Superman character? This is such an alternate universe. There's so many different characters throughout the universe, including a version of Wonder Woman. And I especially like the version of Green Lantern in this, because while Superman is in the Soviet Union and taking over and kind of becoming that figurehead, Lex Luthor is the president of the United States, and he is employing Hal Jordan and the other Green Lanterns to be the fighter pilots, basically, to go up against the Soviet Union Superman. And it's a really cool thought of just like these Green Lanterns who, with Hal Jordan kind of being the front head as a fighter pilot, they're all just like flying through the air as human fighter pilots going after Superman. So that's a really cool visual of being a Green Lantern fan. But yeah, overall, it is a fun book. It is a very different timeline, but I think the best part about this is not needing the Superman backstory really written out. Like, there's so many different Supermans of where does he land. Like, there's one out there where he lands in Wayne Manor and he becomes Batman Superman. There's one where he gets the Green Lantern ring. Like, there's so many different versions of it, but I think this one is one. I think it's about a 4-issue series. It's a great run. Give it a shot if you're a Superman fan, or if you just want a different take on a classic superhero. Now we're going to talk about one that I think I never called this one. I never called this, and I've done this twice with this character, where the Marvel Universe has taken a character and changed it, and I went, why? Why do we need this change? There's a lot of people who will take a character and will just change it for the sake of changing it because it'll sell issues. They'll make a new number 1 version of this character. It'll sell 1 billion copies, and then they kind of don't know what to do with it. And this was one of the first times where the MCU, and I shouldn't say MCU, the Marvel Universe said, we're going to do a completely different version of this character along with some other of our favorite characters and do almost a completely different universe. And again, I went, why? You guys were doing good so far. The sales weren't that great, but why would you completely change things? And I was wrong, because Ultimate Spider-Man, along with the rest of the Ultimates universe, is a pretty cool take on these characters, but especially the Ultimate Spider-Man version. So this was Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley who did this, and it's not a completely different take on it, but it is definitely a modern take on Spider-Man. Spider-Man has been around for so many years, and while there have been modern twists to the character and modern updates to the character, it still felt very, 70s, back when, oh, shucks, I've got to get my homework done before Aunt May yells at me. And it kind of got to the point where this generation, or my generation, was kind of like, we love Spider-Man, but we really don't relate to him. The ultimate version of Spider-Man really lets people relate to Spider-Man, especially the readers that are kids, because this makes Spider-Man a very modern teenager. This is a kid who's having to deal with the modern teenage life. This is someone who's dealing with having modern dialogue. Because as I said, some of those old books, and I don't mean old books like far behind this, were still that, oh boy, I don't know what I'm gonna do. JJ's mad at me. Even if they didn't write it that way, it really felt like that. But this was Spider-Man taking a very current world of 2020 or 2000 and really bringing it into the comic books and reinventing this. Even just the way Spider-Man is in this photo, and he's kind of drawn the same throughout the series. If you look at the 80s 90s Spider-Man, 80s Spider-Man, he looks like he's about 25. He's pretty built for a teenage superhero. This comic book makes him very much look like a teenager, feel like a teenager. They're taking iconic characters and doing different twists on them, making certain characters mean a little more. This run, there's definitely a little less just dealing with, Uncle Ben died, and more bringing into what his parents were, which I don't want to spoil because it's a really cool backstory about what they were working on. Were they working for a company? What did they work on? Do they have ties into things that Peter has to deal with later? They weren't just written off like they are in the original book. It's just kind of, and Peter had parents. And that's it. Like, there wasn't really much about it. So this is a really cool book. It's a really fun book. It is a giant pain in the ass to find, though. It is stupidly expensive to get these in graphic novels. I would love to get them in full in a nice omnibus, but it costs a little bit of money. But yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man, give it a shot. Even the other Ultimates, I really like Ultimate Fantastic Four. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I do. Ultimate X-Men's a fun, different book too, and same with the Ultimate Avengers is a good book too. So any of the Ultimate Universe, give it a shot. It's a different take. Now we're going to stick with the MCU. If you're a fan of Hawkeye and you like the way the character was represented in the MCU, but you don't understand why he was in the MCU, I completely understand. Hawkeye is a character that, while his show was good and while what he did in the MCU was good, there were things about that character that they just didn't get right. He was shown as the family man, and I appreciate that, but I feel there were way better interpretations in the comic book world than they did in the MCU universe. And I wish they did more, but they didn't. But if you want to find more about Hawkeye and why there are so many people out there that love that character, you want to look at the one that's really big, Hawkeye, My Life as a Weapon. This is my first love of Matt Fraction as a writer. This is such a fun street level superhero book. The reviews right there, one of the best and most interesting superhero books on the stands. This series is a need to read. It really is. It is a very stylistic, fun take on Hawkeye that is very beginner friendly. You really don't need a lot of backstory on Hawkeye to enjoy this. David Aja is a great artist in this. It is very simplistic looking. I mean, I'm a big fan of Todd McFarlane. I am a big fan of Capullo and all those guys who do these amazing, intricate drawings. But sometimes you just want that really simplistic artwork that just allows you to enjoy the story and not be, blown away and be looking at all the details. Hawkeye does a great job in this. This really shows off that Clint Barton is just a guy. He's just a guy with a bow, and that's a good thing. That's a fine thing. I feel like people wonder how he fits in the MCU because everyone else is so superpowered and he is just a guy with a bow. This shows that he is a guy with a bow, and it works so well. What else? It's not a big spectacle. It is a very down, gritty, in the streets of New York feel to it, which is something I think Marvel has a problem with sometimes. I feel like they're always looking for that big splash page or that big, some character might lose their life in this issue. And they never did that with this Hawkeye book. It was such a just, what's Matt up to? What's Matt writing about Clint this week? Like, it was really just a fun little episodic book that really brings you into it. Very minimalistic, really good storytelling. Once you read this book, you'll pretty much, anytime you see a picture of Hawkeye after this, you'll think of this art style, and it's just a fun book. So definitely check out Hawkeye if you've never read any Hawkeye. My Life as a Weapon is such a good read. We're going to stick with the MCU for at least one more, and then we're going to jump into something completely different. We're not going to do MCU or DCU. We're going to jump into something completely different. Daredevil is a very fun book to read. There have been many different titles that Daredevil has been a part of that I have loved. The Kevin Smith run was good. Even what they've done in the MCU shows, which has been different takes and they've pulled from different stories. But the one that is the king, and I think most Marvel readers or most comic book fans know about this, but as I said, there are some out there who have not really read into the comics. They've just watched the movies and the TV shows. But if you want to know who Daredevil is and you want a good book to start off with it, The Man Without Fear, again, another Frank Miller book. Again, I don't mind Frank Miller as a writer. I'm just not a big fan of his art. But John Romita Jr.'s art is so good in this. It just blows me away how good of an artist he is. I think the older generation appreciates him. I think the newer generation still doesn't appreciate him as much as he does. A great cinematic storyline from the Daredevil on this Daredevil arc. Really shows the backstory of Matt Murdock in a way that I think was touched on other books, but this really showcased the book in the best form. Really showed the foundation of the character as it's been portrayed in so many books. This is very similar to Batman, and Frank Miller, again, God bless him when it comes to his artwork or his writing. He is very good at getting a version of a character that just stays with that character for many, 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 many generations. And there are a lot of things about the Daredevil character that come from this book. It is, again, very similar to Hawkeye. It is a very ground level. This is a very easy to not big multi-universe style book. Very in the streets, very understanding of how Matt Murdock became Daredevil, the tribulations he's had to deal with, and writing it in a very noir tone, very understanding what Hell's Kitchen is, and understanding that this is a different type of superhero. You know, there's not many that I could say relate to Daredevil, and you can write the same way. Punisher to a point, but you definitely can't compare him to Spider-Man. You definitely can't compare him to Hawkeye or anything like that. That's very street level, but this is a character that deals with, the law side of it as the lawyer, but also dealing with the scum and villainy of the streets of Hell's Kitchen. So overall, such a great book. I believe this is another 4-issue run for Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. Check it out. I've got all 4 of these in book, not as a book, not as a graphic novel, but as individual issues. And I absolutely love it. It's such a good book. So now we've gone through a bunch of Marvel, a bunch of DC. Now we're going to go into something completely different. We're going to go into a left turn. This is a book that I don't think a lot of people know about. And which is funny because this was a book I read in high school. I read this in high school, and it was honestly, I didn't realize it was a comic book, but it is. And it is one of the most well-received comic books back in the day, to the point where it was the first comic book to win the Pulitzer Prize. However, in today's world, a lot of people have a problem with this book because of the nature of the book, what it's about, but also a little bit of the imagery. And you probably don't know about this book, but this book is called Mouse. And what this book is it is Art Spiegelman is the writer and the writer of the book. And what it is, it's him as a child speaking to his father about the experiences as a Polish Jew in the Holocaust War and being a survivor. And what it is drawn as is the mice are Jews and the cats are Nazis. Again, I completely understand why some people have a problem with this, because some people just don't want that type of imagery given to kids or have the opportunity to read about that. I love this book. This is such a fun read, and not a fun read as, boy, I'm glad this happened. It is such a fun read in a very interesting way of how they've taken that relationship of how much we know as people, how cats hate mice, and how they've brought those two similarities together into one book. It is a very, very powerful book when you get into it. There is some, and I think it's like one explicit image that shows partial nudity. So I do know that there are some states and countries that do not show this book or do not let you purchase this book because of that, because of how close it is to comic books and kids read comics. But I love this book. Again, I read this in high school, and showing the depth and the trauma and just the seriousness of the situation that happened, but being able to show it to my generation in a form that was easily digestible is a good way to put it, because I think if you sat down and explained to a child what happened and all of the details surrounding it and what it was like, I feel like they'd nod off, because it doesn't really, they don't get it. Not that they're not interested, they're just too young to understand. This what brought me into understanding all of that a lot more than sitting there listening to a history lecture, which I loved history, but this was just way easier digestible. Yeah, again, I totally understand why some people may not like this book because of the imagery and the whole situation and this being shown to kids. But I think it is a great book that really allowed me to understand at a younger age than probably I should have what that meant, what actually happened, and the severity of it. So we've gone from MCU, we've gone to DCU, we've now gone independent. We're going to go to one of my favorite comic books. A book that, as a kid, I saw this cover going to my local comic book store and it not having a Marvel logo, not having a DC logo on it, and staring at it going, what is this? Why is this so cool? And why is this not involving any of the characters I know? And that is Spawn. Spawn blew me away when I was a kid. When I first went in and I saw that big red cape, that green glow coming from him, I absolutely fell in love with this character. And if you have not read any Spawn, you are missing out on an incredible story. This is, we can go into the game-changing side of it, of Image Comics taking their own intellectual property and making them owner-owned books and not being under any umbrella of the Marvel or DC universe. That's great, but just also the story of Spawn, of someone who did terrible things and it cost him his life, and now he wants redemption and wants his wife back and his child back. It is such a great redemption story. The artwork from Todd McFarlane is just extraordinary. I have stolen so much of his technique growing up and using it and not being asked if it was my own. I drew this. I may have copied it like crazy, but I absolutely love Todd McFarlane's. His artwork is incredible. It just brings a new life to this book. And again, I think so many people know of the character because of, Image Comics and Image Toys and all that. It's hard to be in the comic book world and not know who this character is. But actually sitting down and reading the story of Spawn, at least the first few issues, there's definitely early on some adult themes that if you have younger readers, I would maybe supervise them while reading it, because it definitely takes a dark turn in a couple of the later issues, but it is such a good story. Todd is an incredible writer. This is the reason this character has gone on for so long. They're up to issue, I think, 500 on this series, and they've had so many different incarnations of Spawn, because it's not just been Al Simmons, it has been other people as well. Give Spawn a chance. You can find these, I believe you can find these online if you look hard enough. Read the first couple issues, enjoy them. It's such a good book. I can't recommend Spawn enough to anybody who has never read Spawn. So we are 9 books deep. We got one more, and then we're going to let you guys hit the road for the night. As I said earlier, when I was a kid, I grew up loving comic books, And I was the kid who, if it didn't have good art, I wasn't interested. I just wasn't interested. I could read it and I could enjoy it, but it wasn't enough. And it wasn't until I saw this book that made me go, there's a reason why art means so much to a book. It's not just my personal love for it. It can change a book completely, and it can give a book new life. And that book to me is The Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. If you've never sat down and looked at Alex Ross and his artwork, you are doing yourself a disservice. Alex Ross's paintings are just jaw-droppingly good. And I remember going to a panel back in the day at Fan Expo, and I remember some artist was up talking about how if you want to work in Marvel and you want to be successful, you shouldn't be using reference photos. You should be doing this all from your head. And I remember somebody stood up, threw their hand up and went, Alex Ross would probably say otherwise. Because if you don't know, Alex Ross usually gets his friends together and he will visualize what the panel's going to look like, and he will take photos of his friends, sometimes in costume and sometimes not. And that's what he'll use as his reference photos when he's drawing. Famously, if you know the painting of Harley and Joker, that I believe is him and his wife in the original photo that he then transforms into Joker and Harley. This is such a good book. It is such an interesting take on it as well. So this is not about the superheroes. This book, The Marvels, is actually about a photographer in New York City who is documenting all of the Marvel Universe going on around him. So in this issue specifically, they show the death of Gwen Stacy through the photographer's eyes, seeing that from a different point of view. And that's what makes this such a fun story. There's many writers and artists that will take a story and do a tweak to it or modify it a little bit. Prime example would be this: when you get to the newer Spider-Man movie, where you've got one of the Spider-Men jumps down and saves saves one of the girls, and it should have been Gwen Stacy and all that. It's a different take on it. This is all of those stories that you loved, but from a different point of view. So the same thing happens, but you're seeing it from a different You're seeing it from a different point of view. You're seeing it from the lens of the photographer, and watching him see all of these amazing things that you've seen. Galactus walking through New York City, the Fantastic Four fighting him, seeing the Human Torch as a real person walking through New York City and suddenly bursting into flames. Not like the cartoon like a real person walking through the streets of New York and seeing him go ablaze. It's such a fun book. It's such an interesting take on the Marvel Universe. And Alex Ross in the comic book world gets all the love and deserves all the flowers that he gets. But it's also the Kurt Busiek version of it, where you see the different understanding of the MCU at that point, or the Marvel Universe at that point from a different point of view, is such a brilliant idea. So I got to end it with a great artist, Alex Ross, and a great book, The Marvels. I wish Alex Ross would do more conventions, because I would love to give him the flowers on my own, because I've always been envious of his artwork, and he's absolutely incredible. If you don't know who Alex Ross is, Google him after the show, because it is stunning, the stuff that he can pull off. And folks, we're at the end of the night. We're 54 minutes in. I greatly appreciate you guys coming down this little road with me, talking about some of my favorite comics that I think you guys should check out. If you're still here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It means a ton that you would do that. Next week, we are going to be off. We're going to be on vacation. And then when we get back, we're going to talk about a little thing that is going to be happening possibly for me and possibly for the rest of you. We're getting into cosplay season because the Comic-Cons are right around the corner, and we're going to be talking about Con Crunch. And we're specifically going to be talking about Con Crunch because I am not a fan of it. However, I do know a couple people in my life who have cosplayed and are cosplayers who absolutely love con crunching. And we're going to talk about it. Why do they like it so much? And why do I absolutely detest it? So we're going to be talking about that. Pretty Nerdy Crystal said, I feel like I am. March is so soon. March is so soon. That's why I'm waiting till May to have my cosplay done. March is coming up very quickly. I'm going to be attending Toronto Comic Con on the Sunday. I will be rocking J. Jonah Jameson that day. And then Toronto Game Expo, I will be there. And if you saw my post, or the post I was tagged in, I will be at the Smash Bros booth. I will be rocking Luigi. I got to do a little bit of work when I get back, just making sure Luigi is up and running for that con. So I hope you guys have a good week. I hope you guys will be enjoying your Monday next week. I will miss you all. I will be enjoying the sun and enjoying the warmth not being here. But thank you all. I hope you guys have a good week. I love you all and appreciate you being here. Take care. We'll see you in a couple weeks. See ya. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.